He thought he was being possessed.
That are not of this world.
I said, please, leave me be.
Restless places.
It scared me to death.
Where the dead walk among us. In menacing warships.
I've smelled the burning smell of flesh.
Medieval jails.
You always felt like you're being watched.
And haunted hotels.
Something's here. I gotta save my family.
Hold on. Hold on. Hold on.
These are the most terrifying places. A popular bar stalked by spirits.
There is something strange and weird going on.
We've had guests, employees, and paranormal investigators refuse to go to the upper floors because of the hauntings here. I felt like a claw mark scratched me on my neck. It's pretty crazy.
Savannah, Georgia is considered one of the most haunted cities in America. And when it comes to paranormal activity, the Moon River Brewing Company is at its epicenter. But in the 1800s, this building was home to the City Hotel.
The City Hotel was a very luxurious hotel for its time period. It's where a lot of the locals would come hang out and drink. A lot of business transactions would have taken place here. A lot of card games, too.
But tragedy would come to Savannah. In 1876, the city faced a devastating outbreak of yellow fever.
And the Candler Hospital was overflowing, so they used this place as a makeshift hospital. Yellow fever was a horrible disease. Started vomiting black blood. You would bleed from the mouth, eyes, nose, and ears. It was just a horrible way to go. It took a few weeks before you finally died from the disease.
Today, the Moon River Brewing Company occupies the first floor of the old City Hotel building, and only the first floor. The upper levels have been left to the spirits of those who have died here.
There's an unhappy feeling in the air sometimes. There's a little catch in your chest, or a little tingle on the back of your spine. Something is there, something's watching.
The staff believe that victims of the yellow fever outbreak still wander the building. One is known as the Lady in White.
There's been a woman in white that's been seen on the second floor and the third floor as well.
Several people have told me they've seen the Lady in White. So I definitely know she's up here somewhere. I believe she was probably here during the yellow fever epidemic.
The managers had started to shut everything down, so some of the lights were off, and I was getting napkins, coasters, things like that from the stockroom. I heard like a faint sort of crying from the other room. I saw the bar stool swiveling. I didn't even believe my eyes. But when I looked again, like, it was clearly spinning with nobody around. And then I'm convinced it was the spirit of the Lady in White.
The Lady in White is not only confined to the upper floors.
I was coming back from my break one night, and I went to roll silverware. I had no tables. There was nowhere to roll silverware. It was busy. On a Friday night about 3 weeks ago, set the silverware up on top of the podium up front. As soon as I set the silverware down, I felt something scratch me on my neck, like claw marks on my neck. It was like a burning sensation. It was pretty intense. It left marks on my neck, actually. I showed everyone in the restaurant, and they couldn't believe it.
lady in white is just one of the spirits employees have encountered. Staff believe another violent soul stalks this building. That of a gambler from the 1830s named James Stark. Stark and another man, Dr. Philip Minus, got into an altercation within the city hotel.
Dr. Phil was a very well-liked local physician, and he was being antagonized by a guy by the name of James Stark. Stark had a different reputation. He was a bit of a braggart. He was known as a town loudmouth, and he was also a drunk.
Dr. Minus rented a room on the 3rd floor of the City Hotel. So after a couple of drinks, he headed up the staircase from the 2nd to the 3rd floor. He gets 2 or 3 stairs up, and there's someone shouting from the top of the stairs. He looks directly up, and there's James Stark looking directly down at him. 2 guys start having words again. So Stark reaches in his coat pocket like he's about to draw a weapon.
That was certainly what the doctor thought, so he very calmly pulled his own sidearm and shot James Stark right through the center of his chest.
Stark drops dead immediately on the staircase.
It's been lost to time whether Stark had a firearm under his coat or not, but it appears to many that Stark's spirit still roams the floor in an endless search for vengeance.
I'm a tour guide. I've been a tour guide since 2001. And one of the things we do is we lead pub crawls through Moon River. Moon River just has a vibe all of its own. You just have this sensation like something bad is going to happen.
James begins his tours by ascending the very staircase where James Stark was shot dead.
One evening, I had my crowd. We started up the stairs. We got to the 2nd floor. We entered that 2nd room that overlooks the street. And I turned back to the crowd. And opened my mouth, and nothing came out. Pressure on my throat. I couldn't get any air in or out. I was literally trying to gasp for breath. It just felt like a tightening, almost like a noose or something around my throat. And I remember thinking, what if this is it? What if I just keel over? What if that's my last moment? I thought maybe it was James Stark.
Many have asked why Moon River doesn't refurbish and use the upper floors. The answer is, they tried.
Contractors' men complained of seeing apparitions walking around upstairs, people in period clothing.
They would complain that they were feeling pinches, shoves, punches, scratches. One fellow came to work. He said the room he was in was so cold that he brought a sweater. This is the middle of the Savannah summertime.
So all the contractors' men quit one by one within the first 6 to 8 weeks of construction. And the contractor's determined to finish the job himself, no matter what. So his wife brings him lunch one day on the 3rd floor. They finish having lunch. And then she goes walking down the exact same staircase James Stark had been murdered on many years before. She gets maybe 2 or 3 stairs down the stairs. She felt cold hands on her shoulders. Violent shove from behind. She fell down the entire staircase and broke her right ankle, and the contractor quit that day.
James Stark is a very angry spirit, and I could see him taking his aggression out on people as they move between the different floors.
While the 1st floor belongs to the happy patrons of Moon River, the upper levels are the domain of the dead, and they don't like trespassers.
To this day, they won't renovate the upper floors due to all the hauntings and the occurrences with the contractors. Moon River Brewery is a terrifying location. We have had many guests, employees, and paranormal investigators refuse to go to the upper floors because of the hauntings here.
I definitely believe in the paranormal, especially after working here at Moon River.
I'm just amazing. All right, boys, let's do it.
Every town has its legends.
Whoa! Who was the leader at the end of the war?
Did you see that? Dropped the 66.6 on command.
They're here to separate the facts from folklore.
Is there anyone that wants to come and talk?
Brand new Haunted Towns, Wednesdays on Travel Channel.
a decommissioned warship crewed by the dead.
There's probably not another naval ship in the world that saw no combat, but saw as much death as the Salem.
I've smelt the burning smell of flesh.
And I will say without hesitation, the USS Salem is the most haunted location in New England.
In the waters of Quincy, Massachusetts, is a historic floating fortress, the USS Salem. While it once patrolled seas around the globe, the ship was decommissioned in 1959 and is now part of the U.S. Naval Shipbuilding Museum. But staff and visitors alike believe, while it's no longer in service, there's still plenty of action.
The Salem is a heavy cruiser. She was built in 1949. She is, in fact, the only heavy cruiser left in existence. She's a little over 700 feet long, had a crew of about 1,500 when she was active.
This mighty ship sailed the world. Although it never saw combat, it did experience its share of tragedy.
The Salem was brought to the Brooklyn Naval Shipyard. And while she was there, a smaller ship, a light cruiser, the USS Cleveland, moored outboard of the Salem.
That night, a fire broke out aboard the Cleveland.
It wasn't a very serious fire, and they got it under control and put it out pretty quickly. As the fire control guys were putting their gear away, they were securing all their equipment, one of the ammunition magazines detonated. So when the guys that were injured during the explosion burned in the subsequent fires, they were all brought aboard the Salem for treatment, and a lot of those guys were too badly burned or too badly hurt in the explosion to be saved. The Salem had about 90 deaths aboard, and that's a lot of deaths in a short period of time in a very enclosed area, and those deaths weren't benign. They were pretty violent. They did move some bodies down to a room in the lower part of the ship, and they made that into kind of a makeshift morgue.
Many believe this tragedy forever scarred the USS Salem. Staff claim that one of these victims still stalks the decks and interiors. He's known as the Burning Man.
We were noticing a certain feel that people were watching us, that we would be touched. There were certain smells that would occur that didn't make sense. So although I haven't seen the Burning Man, I have smelt the smell of burning flesh on board the ship. Hear sounds like growling or moaning.
The Burning Man has been known to manifest in disturbing ways.
There was one night when I went into the wardroom. That's where the officers had meetings and ate. It's the biggest single room on the ship. When all of a sudden, the temperature in the room seems to rise dramatically in a very short period of time. A chair pulled away from the table. And as I headed up in that direction, looking out the wardroom door, there was very clearly a shadow kind of peeking out from behind where the gun turret comes down. It was the shape of a person. It was tall like a man. And I chased it for about a half an hour using a flashlight. And after about a half an hour, I realized that there was nobody there, and whatever was there was not interested in letting me catch up to it.
But the Burning Man isn't just a mischievous spirit. It's a powerful force. Each Halloween season, the USS Salem turns into a haunted house. During one such event, the Burning Man made his terrifying presence known.
We had a seance room, and the seance was completely rigged. You know, the guide who would bring them into the room sat in a chair that had buttons on the arms that would make things happen.
So I walked into the seance room and it was completely tricked out. It had black curtains, tablecloths, candelabra, pendulums, all sorts of different tools that would be used in a seance.
We brought in actors to play psychics.
It quickly became very clear that this seance wasn't going to be just fun and games.
The room felt very strange that night.
It went from extremely cool to very hot in a very short period of time, and then the tour guide became overwhelmed.
and I see her head start to bob up and down slowly.
And then the girl felt like she was being overcome by the spirit or the entity that was in the room. Was holding her in her seat. She felt like she was a puppet, and she said that the entity took its hand and then bobbed her head back and forth to indicate yes or no.
She stood straight up, and it looked a little bizarre. She turned and exited the room.
Now, she had a walkie-talkie, but she was kind of walking in a dazed state. And she said over the walkie-talkie, "Help me, help me." When she came to, she was trying to tell me what was going on, but then I'm like, we gotta get out of here now. I think it was the Burning Man.
While the USS Salem once transported a living crew, today it seems to be a ship carrying the dead. Given its tragic history, it's no surprise that malevolent spirits have refused to disembark. A flourishing winery, home to powerful spirits.
I do feel like I'm being watched here all the time at Belvoir. She thought he was being possessed.
I have to warn people before they come in here, they could experience something very terrifying.
Just on the outskirts of Kansas City, Missouri, sits a sprawling compound featuring historic buildings surrounded by vineyards, and many say, occupied by spirits. This is the Belvoir Winery.
My family owns the winery, and I'm the day-to-day manager. We have the winery, which includes the tasting room we're in right now, and then we also do 9 overnight rooms where guests can come and stay.
Belvoir Winery occupies a meticulously restored building that was once an orphanage in the early 1900s. But next door are 3 other structures that sit empty and open to the elements.
We have the old folks home, which it was built in 1902. We have the nursing home, which was built in the 50s. And then we have a medical hospital as well, which it was built in the early 20s.
Over half a century ago, this complex was home to an organization dedicated to helping the less fortunate. They were known as the Odd Fellows.
Odd Fellows is a charitable and fraternal order. It's based on Old and New Testament teachings, mainly the parable of the Good Samaritan. And then they would build 1 or 2 homes in each state. And this is one of the homes that they built. And that purpose was orphan home, poor home, old folks home, and then like a hospital. The government didn't cover those kind of things. There wasn't welfare, there wasn't child protective services. So these kind of places served the needs of those people.
But there was a morbid side to these humanitarians. The Odd Fellows were fascinated by death and incorporated it into their initiation rituals.
The ritual was they had a blindfold on. They would lift the blindfold and basically present the initiate with a skeleton and let them know, hey, this is eventually what you will be. Do what you can while you still have the time. There's a skeleton in all the Odd Fellows rituals. And so it depends on the lodge how old it is usually, whether they have real bones or they have paper mache bones. And they usually call those skeletons George. Our George was in a local Odd Fellows lodge. They were closing down, and so we brought George here. George donated his body to science, and so you can tell that they went ahead and stripped the body to the bones, and then they've actually put him back together using screws and wire and other different things and reassembled him.
And George isn't the only corpse here.
There was a person that committed suicide. There was several people also that passed away in a heat wave in the 30s, basically just got too hot and they were older and passed away, and they're buried here on site in the cemetery.
With nearly 600 graves on site, death's presence on these grounds remains to this day.
Pretty much all the locals know that this is a haunted location. I give tours for the premises here at Belvoir Winery. We were here one night with several people giving a tour. We entered the building and rounded the corner. I always go ahead of everybody. I walked right through all this energy, make your hair stand up on your arms. And we start hearing footsteps. Step, drag. Step, drag.
Keith called out, asking who was there.
It said Dorothy.
Dorothy then manifested in front of the group.
I just froze, and two women screamed. Dorothy was like in a hospital gown or something.
It seemed likely that in life, Dorothy was a patient here who passed while under the care of the Oddfellows. Yet she is just one of the spirits that employees and visitors have encountered.
There had matrons here periodically throughout the years, over about 65 years, and their job was to take care of many of the orphans. At its maximum, there was about 450 kids here.
For one of the inn's employees, it appeared that a former matron had unfinished business in the land of the living.
I had just finished my overnight shift. It was about 5 a.m. and got my phone out to take a picture of the sunrise. I all of a sudden felt the room get very still and heavy. I felt someone watching me. She was just sitting right there in my chair, just probably about 2 feet away from my face. It was just terrifying. Even now, I'm getting anxiety. She had on a very long maroon dress with a collar, and her hair was up in a tight bun. She absolutely seemed threatening. I don't know if I was in the wrong room or she was in the wrong room, but either way, I was not supposed to be there. My guess is that she was either a teacher or a matron for the orphans. Back in the day, that floor was used as classrooms for the orphans. After seeing the woman sitting at my desk, it was really terrifying, and I refused to work a night shift for about 2 weeks after that.
Yet not all of the spirits are harmless. Some are powerful enough to take control of the living.
I'm technically the innkeeper, but I bartend a lot and work events as well.
One night, Haley was serving up drinks to a married couple who are regulars at the Belvoir.
They're celebrating their anniversary, so it was a celebratory occasion. They were calm and just hanging out like a normal day at the winery.
But on this night, something dark took control of the man.
She seems really panicky, and she goes, "Something isn't right with my husband. He's just acting really weird."
Strangely, her husband seemed drawn to one of the abandoned buildings on the property. He asked his wife to go inside with him. When she said no, he became crazed and insistent.
She's like, "You're gonna think this is crazy," but she thought he was being possessed by the aggressive spirit in this building. The way that she was acting, as panicked as she was, I believed her.
Haley is uncertain whether it was Dorothy, the matron, or some more malevolent spirit that took control of the man.
Definitely, without a doubt, believe in the paranormal now. And I would also say that I'm more cautious about the paranormal now. There are just too many sightings, there are too many stories that are too similar to just brush it off and to say that ghosts don't exist.
I am not putting up with what? I am out of
A haunted hotel with guests who have never checked out.
A lot of people have died here, some violently.
My first thought was get my family to safety. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Get them away from this hotel. Get them out of here.
In downtown Flagstaff, Arizona, a bright neon sign beckons visitors to the Hotel Monte Vista. Built in 1926, this nearly century-old historic inn has hosted countless weary travelers. Staff and guests believe that some of these visitors have stuck around eternally.
Legend has it in room 306, a man and 2 prostitutes purchased a room for the evening.
But the night didn't go as planned.
Shut up! I am not putting up with what? I am out of
Two prostitutes were killed in room 306. Their supposed John was angry with them for whatever reason and just decided to push them out the window.
Visitors and staff believe that their spirits are active within the Hotel Monte Vista.
Hotel Monte Vista definitely has an active paranormal presence. We get a fair amount of reports from guests as well as employees that claim that they have experienced something paranormal.
It's said that any man checking into room 306 should beware.
The prostitutes are thought to haunt the room. They seem to be very angry.
Men have told staff that while resting in room 306, they felt hands around their throats.
Since the crime was so brutal, I could see these women lingering around, having such a tragic death. Women have said that they feel a presence watching them while they sleep.
If you were checking into 306, I would tell you to be cautious.
It's not just within room 306 that these tormented souls dwell.
There are places in the hotel that are rumored to be more haunted than others. The basement is one.
People have reported seeing full body apparitions.
We do have a bartender here that reported seeing 2 prostitutes.
Incredibly, one hotel guest and his family actually captured footage of the supernatural in the room next to where the call girls met their fate.
Well, when we checked in, the gentleman at the counter told us a few of the stories of what's gone on here and some sightings that people have had of apparitions through the hallways. There's people that have heard noises, screams. I was a complete skeptic. I'm one of those guys that if you can't see it, you didn't see it personally, you didn't feel it, everybody's BSing. When we were coming up here just to play with my kids, I ended up picking up a spirit board, and I thought, man, we could play with it for a little bit at the end of the night around midnight, and see what happens. I came up here thinking, like, this is a joke. So it's near the witching hour, and we decide we want to play with the board and the spirit board. We light some candles. We do a pan on the room to show the room, like, hey, there's nothing here. There's nobody else here.
Whatever.
And at first it started out as, just ridiculous little questions.
Are you here? Are you with us? Oh God. Oh God. I'm gonna cry.
Ooh, you guys. And at one point I thought my family was messing around with the spirit board and pushing it. Hold on. When you were pulling that, I felt it. No. I took my fingers off and I was like, hey guys, quit messing around, Is there really anything here? Okay. I'm literally.
I know.
I'm done. Hold on, wait. Hold on. Okay, I'm gonna take a quick evaluation. You guys cool? I know I'm scared too. It was just like we knew, like something was here.
I don't.
Okay, so if you're here, move the rocking chair. Hold on. That chair moved. Hold on. Something's here. I gotta save my family. Get them the hell out of here. Oh God, she ran, so I'm not. It was just like, gotta go. Fight or flight, it was time to fly. The moment we got out of here, the moment we left this room and left this hotel, it felt better. Everything felt better. There's no doubt in my mind. There could be the prostitutes. This was by far the most terrifying experience I've ever had.
The Hotel Monte Vista flaunts its historic charm, attracting visitors of all types, including the spirits of the dead.
I think there's a lot of different things lingering in this place.
A desolate manor in the swamp.
This is the most terrifying house that I have ever been in my life.
I looked down and I had like a U-shaped scratch on my arm.
There's been a lot of trauma here. And some very nasty spirits.
Just an hour east of Niagara Falls is a ramshackle home that many believe is a domain of the dead, the Burgeon House. Built in 1858, it has a dark and tragic history. The story goes that in the 1850s, a young woman became pregnant out of wedlock.
She was actually having an affair with one of the married justices of the peace for the town.
But the lawman put an abrupt end to the liaison.
When she told him that she was pregnant, he broke off the relationship, and she became very despondent. She has hung herself somewhere here on the property.
But it's not her soul that stalks this land. Rather, it's the justice of the peace. Legend has it that in life, he was desperate to keep his sordid affair a secret. And even in death, it seems he wants to keep anyone from learning the truth.
This house, it's been my family home since the 50s. I did always know this place was different. We would always have strange things happen, and my father would always tell us, don't tell anybody about it because they'll think you're crazy. Furniture being moved, lights being turned on, doors being slammed so that you can't get out of a room. I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw my doll move. So I'm looking at her. She turned her head and looked at me.
It seemed the house was haunted. One night, Kathy's suspicions were confirmed. A ghostly apparition appeared in her room.
He told me that I could call him Robert. He actually told me that he was a non-human spirit. And because the spirits were so active at night, and they would come out and they would try to talk to me and interact with me, I wouldn't get any sleep.
Robert assured her that he was there to protect her.
Robert told me, as long as he stood in my bedroom at night, the other spirits were afraid of him. And he told me the reason that he stood in my room was that he liked me. He would just show up full apparition, boom, right there.
Throughout her childhood, Robert stood watch over Kathy. Although she experienced strange activity, she never felt threatened. Eventually, Kathy grew up, got married, and moved out of the Burgeon house. But it wouldn't be forever.
I never had plans on moving back into this home. We decided to move back in for financial reasons so that we could fix this house, get it back stable. We are here temporarily, though. I do not plan on staying here forever.
As she set out to clean up and take on the much-needed repairs, Kathy brought friends in to help. But they found that the energy within the Burgeon house had changed, becoming stronger and darker.
The day that I came out here was a very, very nice, calm summer day. It was just a beautiful day. I got like this really crazy feeling, like, look out this window. It was like almost in the back of my mind, something was saying, look, come out and look out this window. And at that point, I just walked right over to the window and looked out. I saw a man standing right on the edge of the property, watching and looking. And I asked, who is that? Is that somebody that lived here? No, we're the only ones here. This is somebody that we see occasionally. And I looked out the window again. He was gone. There was nobody out there. And there's no way he could have got away. No way. There's all this swamp surrounding this house.
It seemed the justice of the peace was prepared to lash out at the living.
I was a good friend of Kathy's, and I came here to help her out.
We were here cleaning up, The house had been empty for over 8 years, and it was quite messy.
We had just put the cups in the cupboard, and we were getting ready to leave, and I started mocking the ghost. I was being skeptical, you know, and I didn't believe in that kind of thing.
And I reminded him that I told him before, you can't do this. And he did it again and laughed, and he thought it was funny.
And all of a sudden, a cup come flying at me, just barely missed me and hit up against the wall. It scared the bejesus out of me. I ran to the car, and I didn't stop till I got in there and locked the door.
I believe it happened because he was a non-believer, and he was expressing that he didn't believe in spirits and he didn't believe in ghosts. And there's at least one spirit here that becomes very offended and aggressive when you deny their existence.
At times, the apparition would get downright violent.
As I started going up into the second floor, going up those stairs, it was just like a icky feeling. It was something pushing me. I'm pushing my chest. And I got a burning sensation in my forearm. I looked down, and I had like a U-shaped scratch on my arm. It burned. It burned like somebody put a cigarette out in my arm. But I do believe that whatever's living in this house is disturbed and controlling and dominant. And it wants its way.
I never believed in entities or spirits or anything till I had the incident happen to me. And since then, I've turned into a true believer.
A medieval jail with phantom prisoners.
Bodmin Jail has a reputation for being the most haunted building in Britain.
You always felt like you're being watched, and that's the best way to describe it.
Looming above the county of Cornwall in England is a shadowy fortress, Bodmin Jail. It was built in 1779 by prisoners of war, designed to inspire a sense of dread and despair.
When you approach Bodmin Jail, you see a turret at the top. There's a very iconic tower at the top. You see a looming building or Victorian jail looming over the town. You see two huge rows of cells looking out upon you, and the gatehouses that you meet as soon as you get up the hill.
The moment you walk in there, it's like you're going back in time to a different era. It just feels like the whole place is alive.
For nearly 150 years, Bodmin Jail imprisoned some of the worst criminals in England.
The structure for the prisoners was very strict. They had to adhere to very stiff rules. They weren't allowed to speak, for instance, unless they were spoken to. Dietary needs for the prisoners were meagre amounts of food. They were enough to sustain life, but not to actually feed someone. It was a varied diet of potatoes and some small fractions of meat, but generally it was a very bare diet. And of course, we had things like gruel.
By the time it shut its doors for good in 1922, 60 inmates had been executed within its walls.
The prisoner would be brought out from the condemned cell, accompanied by the chaplain, who'd be looking after him, consoling him in his final hours, giving him comfort. He'd have the sack put over his head, the rope round his neck. He'd wait for the executioner to take the pin out of the lever, push it forward, and drop the prisoner down.
Of all the executions that took place here, it's said that one forever altered Bodmin Jail, the hanging of a convicted killer named William Hampton.
William Hampton was just a simple man, but he fell in love with a lady called Emily Tredear after an argument ensued. William murdered her family.
At 24 years old, Hampton would hold the distinction of being the last person hanged here, but staff and visitors believe he never truly left.
I came to Bodmin Jail about several years ago, sort of exploring the building, seeing what's around, because I wanted to learn about the actual jail and experience what they went through. As I walked down the stairs, the basement,
I mean, it's cold in here, but it's a lot colder in here.
It's literally just felt like the energy changed, it shifted.
Tony walked to what was once the cell of William Hampton, complete with a placard telling his tale.
Gone out and read his plaque, and within 2 minutes of reading that out, on cue I said, William, if you're here, can you let us know or give us a sign? Within 2 minutes, the light's gone off completely down the basement level.
Come here. Come here.
Tony's experience was actually quite interesting because the next floor up from him remained lit. That's on the same circuit. It should never have happened. There was no electrical faults on that day. It's still a complete mystery as to why those lights dropped out that day.
There we go.
I just couldn't understand why the lights went off.
Moments later, Tony found that William Hampton wasn't the only spirit lurking within Bodmin jail. It seems that others connected to his execution also linger down here.
This figure just walks past in the basement. Dark hair. I believe it to be in like a priest uniform. Very oldie-worldy clothes. It's not something we'd be wearing in this time.
Tony believed it could be the very priest that read William Hampton his last rites.
As a prisoner was waiting to be executed, he would be visited by a priest or a chaplain. He would be there to read the Bible with him and also try and help him ease through to his next life, as it were. So prisoners were always in a single cell structure, so they were always housed by themselves, but there were solitary confinement cells as well. Prisoners arrived here, some of them destitute, absolutely exhausted from life, or they'd suffered trauma themselves and been at the backhand of people's speculation of them. Some of our prisoners would have been innocent people as well, that were caught up in the times that we had in the Victorian era. Others had committed serious crime, and they would have to carry those for many, many months or many years, or sometimes just a few weeks if they were dealing with the prospect of being hanged here. And it would be very likely that this gentleman would have been comforting prisoners and giving them their last rites just prior to execution.
In fact, Tony was shocked to later learn that this happened on the anniversary of William's death.
It could be residual, because you're seeing something that may have happened in their time.
Bodmin Jail has a reputation for being the most haunted building in Britain, and I would like to agree with that.
Bodmin Jail was expertly designed to torment the living within its walls and continues to terrify visitors today, making it one of the world's most terrifying places.